From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I am Ahmed Ramadan. The U.S. admits its first white South African refugees under a new policy, sparking global debate over race and refugee status. This and more coming up in today's show. Freed Israeli-American soldier Eden Alexander has been reunited with his family in Israel after his release from Gaza by Hamas. The emotional reunion took place after he underwent medical checks at a military base near the border. Alexander, the last known living U.S. prisoner in Gaza, was handed over to the Red Cross on Monday in Khan Yunis. He was then received by Israeli forces and flown to the Re'im military base where his family was waiting. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Israeli hostage affairs coordinator Gal Hirsch were present for the reunion, which follows indirect negotiations between Hamas and the U.S. mediated by Qatar and Egypt. According to the Washington Post, approximately 23,380 American citizens were serving in the Israeli army last year. Many of them immigrated to Israel. Reservists living in the U.S. were also called back to Israel for active duty last year. Israel says 58 prisoners remain in Gaza. According to rights groups, around 10,000 Palestinians are held in Israeli prisons across Israel and in the occupied territory, more than half without charge, including minors, women, and even pregnant captives. President Donald Trump is being criticized for undermining the constitutional principle of separating church and state. Writing in The Hill, opinion contributor Svante Myrick warned that Trump's recent remarks and actions reflect a dangerous disregard for religious freedom and equality. At a recent National Day of Prayer event at the White House, Trump announced a new Religious Liberty Commission packed with loyalists. Myrick, who heads the advocacy group People for the American Way, called Trump's move an attack on our founding ideals. He highlighted controversial appointees like conspiracy theorist Eric Taxis and televangelist Paula White, who demonize Trump's critics and seek to reshape America as a Christian nation. Analysts warn this agenda threatens minorities, fuels bigotry, and violates the Constitution. Myrick urged Republicans to defend democracy as Justice David Souter once did. The justice, who died recently, was a Republican, but strongly defended church-state separation and religious liberty. The Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, is urging President Donald Trump to rescind the appointment of former Fox News host Jeanine Pirro as interim attorney for the District of Columbia. The civil rights group said Pirro's history of anti-Muslim rhetoric raises serious concerns about her ability to serve in one of the most critical federal law enforcement roles in the country. CAIR cited past incidents, including Pirro's 2019 remarks about Representative Ilhan Omar's hijab. Pirro had questioned whether Omar's religious attire indicated adherence to Islamic law and thus opposition to the U.S. Constitution. Civil rights organizations condemned Pirro's remarks as Islamophobic, saying they echoed dangerous stereotypes and had no basis in law or fact. I added that part too. Senator Chris Van Hollen has warned the Trump administration's reported plan to suspend habeas corpus should alarm all Americans. Speaking in Washington, Van Hollen called the move a wake-up call, saying it amounts to declaring martial law. He criticized White House advisor Stephen Miller's support for the idea, saying Miller holds major influence over Trump. Suspending habeas corpus would remove the right to challenge detention in court, a fundamental constitutional safeguard. Van Hollen stressed that ignoring such plans would only embolden the administration. He cited the wrongful deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadorian man and Maryland resident, as a troubling example. Despite a Supreme Court order for his return, the Trump administration continues to resist. Van Hollen accused El Salvador of holding Garcia for U.S. interests and slamming Republicans for staying silent. Bullies start with the vulnerable, but they never stop there, he warned. The U.S. has welcomed its first of Afrikaner or white refugees from South Africa under a new Trump-era resettlement initiative. The State Department calls the move a response to what it claims is unjust racial discrimination faced by the white minority group. Afrikaners, who are descendant from Dutch, German, and French settlers, ruled South Africa during its apartheid era. Now, U.S. officials claim they are victims of violence and land seizures without compensation. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce said the program supports Trump's policy to prioritize protection for what she said was victims of racial discrimination. She vowed continued support for incoming Afrikaners to rebuild their lives. However, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa rejected the refugee label, saying Afrikaners are not persecuted and have never been expelled. He stressed that South Africa remains inclusive, even for its former colonizers. The move has sparked debate over racial justice, historical context, and refugee definitions. We have a report from Dawood Warnsby regarding this news.
In May 2025, a plane landed in the United States. On board were 59 white South Africans, welcomed with open arms by the Trump administration. Not because they fled war, famine, or genocide, but because they were white. Trump claimed they were victims of genocide, said white Afrikaners faced racial discrimination in South Africa, that they needed saving from a black-led democracy. But history tells us something else. For 46 years, apartheid ruled South Africa, a regime built on racial segregation. Black South Africans couldn't vote, couldn't live where they wanted, couldn't even walk freely without a passbook. They were stripped of land, dignity, and freedom. It wasn't the whites who were hunted. They were the rulers. They were the hunters. They were the law. It was the black majority, dispossessed, beaten, and killed. They fought, not for power, but for equality. Across the ocean, in America, black Americans faced their own system of exclusion. Not just in schools or buses, but on borders. Until 1965, U.S. immigration law kept out most people of color. White Europeans were welcomed, others were shut out. But the civil rights movement broke that barrier. It helped America learn about the humanity of others. The gates opened. Non-whites could enter as well. But now, it's being undone. The Trump administration is fast-tracking white South Africans and banning others. Afghans, Africans, Haitians, calling migrants an invasion, slamming doors once opened by the blood and courage of past movements. The movements that fought to dismantle racism once changed the world. But today, those victories are being erased, policy by policy, border by border.
House Republicans have unveiled a new bill that could strip Medicaid coverage for more than 8 million low-income Americans. The proposed legislation includes major cuts to the program, including work requirements and added costs for people earning just above the poverty line. Analysts say the plan, which is part of a larger budget package, would save $715 billion over 10 years, but at the cost of millions losing health coverage, including children, seniors, and people with disabilities. Observers say the GOP is targeting vulnerable communities to fund tax breaks for the wealthy. Democrats have condemned the bill as dishonest and dangerous. New rules would require recipients to prove eligibility regularly, which experts say could lead to mass disenrollments due to red tape. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office warns that at least 8.6 million would lose insurance if the bill becomes law. Democrats have vowed to block the legislation, calling it direct attack on American healthcare. Twitch star Hasan Piker says U.S. border agents detained and questioned him over his views on Israel and Trump, calling it political intimidation. This and more coming up next. Welcome back. Popular Twitch streamer and political commentator Hasan Piker says he was detained and questioned by U.S. border agents over his political views. Returning from France, the Turkish-American was stopped at Chicago O'Hare's airport and taken to a private room by Customs and Border Protection agents. Piker said he was interrogated for nearly 2 hours. Agents asked if he supported Hamas, Hezbollah, or Yemen's Houthis and pressed him on his views about Israel and Donald Trump. He told his live stream audience the questions felt politically motivated and designed to intimidate critics of U.S. foreign policy. Piker, who holds U.S. citizenship and is part of the Global Entry Program, warned the interrogation could have legal consequences depending on his answers. He believes the goal was to silence dissenting voices and create fear. CPB has yet to respond to the incident. Piker was en route to speak at the University of Chicago when detained. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib has endorsed Donovan McKinney, a progressive challenger running to unseat fellow Democrat Sri Thanedar in Michigan's 13th district. Tlaib praised McKinney's focus on community needs and his rejection of corporate donors. McKinney, who is backed by Justice Democrats and several state lawmakers, is campaigning on affordable living, public education, environmental justice, and workers' rights. Thanedar, a former pharmaceutical executive, has served the district since 2023. He responded by reaffirming his commitment to fighting President Donald Trump and bringing federal funds to his constituents. A key rift between Tlaib and Thanedar is Israel's genocide in Gaza. Tlaib supports a ceasefire and ending U.S. military aid to Israel. Thanedar initially echoed those views, but later distanced himself from the Democratic Socialists of America over its stance on the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack. Tlaib's endorsement is seen as a major boost to McKinney ahead of what's expected to be a heated 2026 primary battle. The group, Reporters Without Borders, or RSF, is calling on Congress to restore funding for the Uyghur language service of Radio Free Asia. The appeal comes after the service was shut down following President Donald Trump's decision to cut federal support for the U.S. Agency for Global Media. RSF says this closure silences one of the few independent voices reporting on China's harsh repression of Uyghur Muslims in Chinese-occupied eastern Turkestan, called Xinjiang by the Chinese government. RSF's Anbo Kande warned the world will lose a vital window into the region. Veteran journalist Gul Shera Hoja called the move devastating as China intensifies its crackdown and global disinformation campaign. Radio Free Asia laid off much of its Uyghur staff in early May due to funding cuts. The Chinese government has reportedly detained more than 1 million Uyghurs in camps since 2017, facing forced labor and surveillance. The U.S. declared this as a genocide in 2021, accusing China of trying to erase Uyghur identity. In the past 24 hours, at least 46 Palestinians have been killed and 73 injured in renewed Israeli attacks across Gaza, according to the health ministry. Among the dead is journalist Hassan Islaye, killed in an Israeli strike on Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, where he was receiving treatment from a previous attack. The Committee to Protect Journalists condemned the strike, saying 178 media workers have died since the genocide began on October 2023. Airstrikes also killed civilians in Beit Lahia, Gaza City's Shijaya neighborhood, and Nusayrat and Burej refugee camps. A police commander was among those killed in Khan Yunis. Witnesses report continued shelling in eastern Gaza City and Rafah, along with systematic home demolitions. According to Gaza's Government Information Office, Israel has killed over 62,000 Palestinians and injured nearly 120,000 since the start of its genocide in the region on October 2023. Many victims remain trapped under rubble as rescuers struggle to reach them. The United Nations has warned of a worsening Israel-imposed humanitarian crisis in Gaza, reporting a dramatic 70% drop in hot meal deliveries in just 5 days. UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric said 260,000 meals were delivered Monday, down from 840,000 last Wednesday, a daily reduction of 580,000. Community kitchens are shutting down rapidly as food aid dwindles. Dujarric stressed that humanitarian support also includes health, water, hygiene, and protection. He also said Gaza's healthcare system is hanging by a thread, with hospitals overwhelmed by mass casualties and facing critical shortages of supplies, blood, and staff conditions due to Israel's blockade and repeated attacks on medical infrastructure. Fuel to run medical and water facilities is also nearly exhausted. Since March 2nd, Israel has kept Gaza's crossings closed to food and medical aid, worsening conditions according to human rights groups and the UN. Dujarric warned that those most at risk are being left behind amid growing desperation. Residents of Pakistan-administered Azad Kashmir held a demonstration in the city of Muzaffarabad in support of the Pakistan Army amid recent tensions with India. Crowds gathered near military camps where demonstrators chanted pro-army slogans and embraced soldiers to show their solidarity for defending the region against Indian aggression last week. Participants praised the military's role in ensuring the region's security and reaffirmed their commitment to national unity. A new Human Rights Watch report says that at least 130 Fulani civilians were killed by the army and allied militias in the West African country of Burkina Faso. The killings happened in March near the town of Solenzo during a major anti-militant operation. Fulani, or Fulbe people, are an ethnic group in the Sahara, Sahel, and West Africa, widely dispersed across the region. Human Rights Watch says viral videos of atrocities by pro-government militias were only part of the story. Its research found the army directly responsible for the mass killings of the Fulani, a largely Muslim pastoralist community. The report says Fulani villagers fled in large numbers toward Mali, but were blocked by forces occupying the area. The violence also triggered retaliatory attacks by an Al-Qaeda-linked group, JNIM. Human Rights Watch interviewed 27 people and analyzed 11 videos showing abuses. The government has not responded to the latest report, but denied similar claims last year. Rights groups say human rights have worsened since Burkina Faso's military seized power in 2022 following 2 coups. President Donald Trump and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman signed a major strategic partnership in Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh, on Tuesday. The deal covers defense, energy, mining, space, and health cooperation. A $600 billion Saudi investment pledge into the U.S. was also announced, with talks of raising it to $1 trillion. Trump was warmly welcomed with a grand ceremony and escorted by Royal Saudi Air Force jets. He is also attending a high-level U.S.-Saudi investment forum with top CEOs including Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. Princess Rima, Saudi ambassador to the U.S., hailed the visit as key to global peace and prosperity. In the Washington Times, she wrote that today's Saudi Arabia offers equal rights to women, a booming non-oil economy, and new sectors such as AI and clean energy. Trump's visit will also include stops in Qatar and the UAE, with possible talks in Turkey on Ukraine. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.